We commit your final mortal remains to the bosom of the Pacific Ocean, which you love so well. Good night, sweet prince. Oh shit, dude, I'm sorry. Goddamn wind. Fuck.
God damn it, Walter. You fucking asshole.
Hi, I'm Matt, and this is a video essay on the relationship between American death culture and funerals in comedy films. Western funerals, more than anything, are about rebirth, not just for the dead, either. A shirking of sadness must be replaced with joyful celebration. Comedic films, more than the melodramas one would expect to see these scenes in, display this better than any other medium because they allow the viewer an objective view of the funeral, rather than having them grieve along with the actors.
Ashes to ashes, dust to dust.
Comedic funeral scenes in Western cinema portray funerals as Americans truly view them, while dramatic films play them as what Americans wish them to be. In order for me to properly explain, the story has to start at the beginning.
It's always an honor to be asked back, and I do it gladly because I feel if even one thing I say or demonstrate today helps you in any way as you embark on your careers, then everyone will have benefited. You, those who are grieving, and the deceased.
This is Bernie. He's a jolly mortician
No one uses the word mortician anymore, Lloyd. It's funeral director.
who later befriends a cruel widow. This scene should be upsetting to the viewer, but it's not. The music and cinematography make the mood sad, but it's juxtaposed next to Bernie.
One stray rogue hair.
He desecrates the body and does his best to bring it back to life as a sort of cosmopolitan Dr. Frankenstein.
It's almost like they want one last look at this miraculous world, but with some super glue.
And this is why the scene is so funny. It's Bernie, and it's that silly irony that he's unaware of that makes the scene so
You
brilliant.
cannot have grief tragically becoming comedy.
This is the true thesis of the film. Death, tragedy, and comedy, Bernie, collide. But later, Bernie becomes tragedy when he kills his friend and covers it up. Tragedy becomes comedy, and comedy in turn becomes tragedy, returning to comedy.
Cut it in little quarter-inch cubes. Does a better job of keeping the crust from getting soggy.
When first meeting Marjorie, he has but one wish.
And someday, if I'm lucky, many, many years from now, I will give you such a beautiful funeral with all the roses in East Texas. I know it'll be the event of the season in Carthage.
And he does, but in an unexpected and ironic way. Now, while he prepares the dead for the living for a living, he can't prepare his own.
I was always the one weeping by her open casket.
And he even closed the makeshift casket so that no one would see.
Why would she tape her freezer shut?
It's true, unadulterated irony. But what does all this irony have to do with funerals being funny? This is where we have to delve into American death culture. Embalming is a peculiar American tradition with its roots in the Civil War. Historians have not given a decisive answer just as to why this is, but at that time, Americans began to see death as unfair, while the importance of beauty was ever growing. Simply put, Americans began to refuse death. Morticians became funeral directors, and an entire death business was developed. capitalism and broken Puritanism collided, resulting in the ritual we see it as today. There's a tangible irony to the whole process. Prepare the dead to look alive, so that the living may grieve for the dead one last time. This tampering of the body from its natural state is not desecration, as to keep the beauty of the human for as long as possible is viewed as a good deed. This way, the mourners don't have to look death in its gaunt face. And due to America's fetishization of death and beauty, they're two sides of the same coin. Throughout the film, Bernie speaks of how beautiful and fragile life is.
It's so beautiful. Every moment a miracle. And yet in a blink it's gone. Too young. Don't laugh. Too young.
But views the corpse as a shell.
Their souls are already with the Lord by the time I'm involved.
So in beautifying them, he doesn't attempt to keep them alive. He's easing the living through the grieving process, and the corpse is his canvas. Yet it's clear that he's uncomfortable with death when he hides Marjorie in the freezer, showing that he didn't wish to cover his crime up. He was just afraid to see what death truly looks like.
Never even run or break or party.
And now, Karen Bowers, an old college friend of Alex's, will play one of Alex's favorite songs.
All of these scenes are from comedies and portray the typical American funeral. They're all solemn, and more importantly, they're full of people. Because there's nothing more sad than an empty funeral. And at most, 2 people are actually mourning. The rest stand stoically, uncaring or otherwise. If the old adage of funerals are for the living is to be believed, why are they so unsatisfying to everyone involved? Most people simply don't care, and oftentimes use the formula of cultural grieving to their advantage.
It's a 2-page layout with her suicide note right up here in the corner. It's more tasteful than it sounds.
And that's the sad truth. Furthermore, those who actually miss the deceased are the ones most harmed by the funerary process. Funeral systems may actually encourage disenfranchised grief by failing to acknowledge certain personal relationships. Ritual may be used to create distance from overwhelming emotion, resulting in delayed expression of grief.
Can't believe it. His funeral and she's stoned.
Participating by sharing stories, expressing condolences, crying, and otherwise interacting with others at the funeral demonstrated a robust relationship with funeral satisfaction. It may not be the expression of emotion per se, as in a eulogy or performance, but the social negotiation of emotion, the confirmation of one another's emotions. That's the most important feature of funeral satisfaction.
Last time I spoke with Alex, we had a fight. I yelled at him.
That's probably why he killed himself.
It is the communication between people, that shared experience that allows for grief. Formal funerals do not allow for such interaction, but reflection after the ritual opens up those wounds.
So how's your life?
Oh, great. How's yours?
Not so great.
Oh, we're telling the truth.
It is in moments like these that break the ritual. These cold truths told with a heavy heart is what allows people to really grieve.
We give first preference to people who kill themselves in one of our bathrooms. That was a terrible thing to say.
This also allows the mourner to look into oneself.
I haven't met that many happy people in my life. How do they act?
Again, we come back to the use of irony in juxtaposition. The Big Chill is unique and masterful in its presentation. The characters themselves embody the message and the writing. That is to say, all the details of their past come through conversational dialogue as we piece together who brought them together and how they see one another. They personify the funeral and the grieving experience. They begin with small talk and light jokes as a few details of their feelings slip through. They have a lot of late-night conversations, and by the end of the film, they finally talk about what brought them together, their mutual friend Alex, and come to terms with his death. The Big Chill spends a fraction of its time on the formal funeral, and the rest focuses on the truth and satisfaction through interpersonal conversations outside of the ritual.
I don't believe this.
I'm pretty sure that Barney was the biggest piece of shit I ever knew.
Oh, yeah. He was the man.
I mean, he was the worst guy ever, man.
Oh, yeah, I hated him.
Right?
Yeah.
You hated him.
Oh.
Hated him.
Oh. Prick. Oh, he was a prick and an asshole.
Hated him.
What is comedy but tragedy in perspective? Or something like that. While researching, I found something that I should have noticed a long time ago. Funeral scenes work so well in comedies not just because of their black humor or irony, but because it represents the American mentality as well. There has to be tragedy in order for there to be comedy, and the conflict within is to keep the jokes rolling even when something terrible has happened. A story can't be told without its downs, but the entire point of a comedy is to make the audience laugh. So when a screenplay has a funeral, the audience has to be cheered up. They aren't allowed to be sad for too long, especially after the funeral scene ends. Further, every film with the funeral premise always ends up being about rebirth. The grim setup is just a hook for the main plot to unfold. The entire story of Harold and Maude is about a strange boy who appreciates life in the end. It's no different from It's a Wonderful Life. But the typical American funeral is a lie, much like the setup of Harold and Maude. That body had its jugular cut and bled out to look alive. Everything about the funeral is for appearance's sake. The idea of doing a year's worth of grief at one ceremony is ludicrous, but we must keep up our smile because...
I don't know why. Maybe because no one wants to hear about my misery. Because they have their own.
When it comes down to it, it is our fellow man that gets us through these dark moments, not some time-honored tradition. Comedy films, more than any other medium, understands that the best.
Hey man, it was nice to meet you.
Same.
See ya.
Hey,
Yeah.
you do me a favor.
Oh, I'll go to yours.
Yeah, I mean,
Will you?
whoever dies first.
Okay, good.
Take care, man.
See ya. Take care.
And even though the world goes on for eons and eons, you are only here for a fraction of a second. Most of your time is spent being dead or not yet born, but while alive, you wait in vain, wasting years for a phone call or a letter or a look from someone or something to make it all right, and it never comes. Or it seems to, but it doesn't really. So you spend your time in vague regret or vaguer hope that something good will come along, something to make you feel connected, something to make you feel whole, something to make you feel loved.